Good morning, it's Jeffrey Cohen, Chicago Quantum. It's Monday, June 27th. We're here to talk about the markets, pre-market, and we're going to share some of the insights from our run today. So starting off in pre-market U.S. equity futures, the Dow Futures are up 113 points. Implied open is up 117. So looks good, right? S&P 500 futures up 18 and a quarter. Implied open, because fair value is slightly below, is up 19 points. NASDAQ futures up 76.5 points. Implied open is up 78 points. So, looking pretty good pre-market. And if you look at the top pre-movers, according to CNN Business, you see Freeport-McMoRan, which we've talked about a lot, is up quite a bit in pre-market. So it looks like early morning bets are being made on economically sensitive stocks. Okay? So what's going on? What was the news that we saw? Like, what made us interested about the market? So when we looked last week on Friday, we saw that the markets bounced dramatically higher into the close. If you see those bumps there at the end, that last candle is very green and very tall. That shows that the market jumped up in the last, let's say, 15 minutes of trading. And we saw it with certain stocks that we actually hold in our own portfolio. There was a pretty big jump in the morning. Now we checked these overnight, and Bitcoin's at 21,200. That's right around that new support level of 20,000. It's actually just above. The euro dollar is kind of where we'd expect at 105.68. The Japanese yen at 135.43 is high. It's high, so that the Japan still has a fairly weak currency. There could still be that thing with the Japanese central bank, where they're trying to keep the rates low on Japanese government bonds. They had set a limit of 0.25% yield, and we're defending that level by basically sucking up extra liquidity. They were spending money to buy bonds so that the price of the bonds would go up, the yield would stay down. So they bought, I want to say it was $81 billion worth of bonds, which in the U.S. doesn't seem like much. We got $9 trillion. But in Japan, $81 billion, I guess, is a lot of money. And so it made a big deal. Popped up the currency and all that. And there's people betting against, kind of for and against there. Could be a tempest in a teapot, though, for U.S. investors. So we look at the currencies. I mean, the U.S. dollar is a little weaker, which is good for stocks. The VIX is down, which, by the way, we're surprised that the VIX is down at 28.20. Because what we're seeing is the variance of the S&P 500, at least the S&P 500 ETF that we use in our model, is in fact going up. It's a steady climb higher. And so the VIX is going down, which means insurance on a fast-moving S&P 500, a wide-ranging moving S&P 500, is becoming cheaper. Excuse me, alarm's going off. Got to make sure my daughter gets up. She's got a new camp this week. Last week was about water sports. This week is about art. So she will be making art, hands-on in an art center for a whole week. And that's pretty exciting. Of course, I drive her, but we're sharing the commute now with one of her friends, which is helpful. So it's interesting when I look. So the markets look like they're trying to rally, strong rally, in the middle of a downturn. You see the shape of those charts. They're all sloping down. They've all got different rises and then falls. And so if you believe that the trend is your friend, if you believe that trend, that S&P 500 trend is going to continue lower, then you can't buy these rallies, right? You just have to kind of watch them and maybe sell them when they rally up and they flatten, rally up, flatten, rally up, flatten, rally up, flatten, rally up, no flatten, 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 little bit of flatten, flatten. So maybe you just have to sell the peaks, the local peaks. I don't know. Tell you what our model says. Our model is giving crazy, weird results. So that tells me that the market is changing and that it's not the same. So let's talk just a little bit about the news I saw. So California wants to offer gas price relief. So California made gas prices more expensive. And now they're upset because the people who live there, can't afford it. Sales tax exemption, exclusion of forgiven 2021 Paycheck Protection Program loans from state income tax. What is going on here? So, individuals making up to $75,000 a year, or joint filers making up to $150,000, will just get money. $350 a person, up to $3. Okay. So I look at that and I think, why don't we just drop money out of a helicopter? It'd be more efficient. In fact, if you dropped quarters, you could limit how much people could carry. And then, everyone would just go and get quarters, right? It'd be great. So I don't know about this. I think it's better to take care of gas prices. And in our opinion, Chicago Quantum, Jeffrey Cohen, I think all this finagling with the tax code is dangerous because it changes the kind of the concept of taxes. Taxes becomes a means in which to give money back, which I think is fine.
Sorry, I don't have any information about that.
Thank you, Google. You can turn off now. So, Russia sovereign bonds maturing 2036, trading at 20 cents in the dollar. It's probably a good deal. They defaulted on their foreign currency debt for the first time in a century. And the reason is that the U.S.-led coalition has put sanctions on Russia, and those sanctions on Russia have made them unable to pay their debt. So, I don't know how I feel about that. Russia's pushed back against the debt designation because they have the money. They just can't do the thing that they got to do. And so, yeah, I'm starting to switch gears on this whole Russia-Ukraine thing. I think pushing Russia into a debt default isn't what we wanted. They could just leave the system. Then they don't need us anymore, and that's just, I don't like it. So, consumer sentiment falls to record low in June. Is that really true? Oh, it's the University of Michigan survey of consumers' sentiment. Consumer sentiment index was lowered to 50. It's the lowest level on record. Okay. So what they're saying is the consumer is not going to save the system. So here's the problem. When we look at different indices that we follow, and we look at retail, and we look at Friday, you had 4 stocks drop, and some of them are story stocks, like BBBY, Bed Bath & Beyond, I think is selling itself. DXL Group, don't know. Hydrofarm Holdings. I mean, that's a cannabis stock that's been falling for months. The rest is up. So the question is, if consumer sentiment is so bad, why is Carvana up 10%? Why is Macy's up 10%? Why is Wayfair up 10%? Why is the Gap up 9%? So I was expecting the Gap to be up 9% when there's a boom in the economy, when people have money to buy new clothes, when people are excited to check out the latest fashions. Not when they're hunkering down paying $6 a gallon for gasoline. I don't understand. There's a disconnect between news and reality, or news and stock prices, which is my reality. So, there's not a lot of news. I'm just very upset about this Russia thing. I think Russia may be right here. Sanctions are to blame. The sanctions were put on because Russia invaded a sovereign country and killed an enormous number of people and pushed millions of people into refugee status. So I get it. It's punishment for the crime. But, I mean, what are we going to do now? We're going to buy up the debt now that it's in default and make Russia, make profit on Russia? This just starts to feel a little bit dirty right now. So I don't know if I like that. This is how I feel. So let's look at the indices. So the main thing here is we are in a downturn in the market, but it doesn't mean it has to continue. It does not have to continue. You have lows. So it reached a peak January, then it dropped down to 4,300, 4,200, 4,200, 4,100, 3,900, 3,900, 3,700. It doesn't have to keep falling, but you're in a downturn. And when we look at things, copper up to 376, that's a pretty nice bump back up. Silver's back over 21. I mean, the market's like recovered, basically. The one thing that gives me hope, we've got the bond yields. 30-year bond yields are going up. The bond itself is coming down. So 137 was where we started tracking. 130 is a support level for the 30-year bond. And we're at 135.38. The 10-year, again, like 115 was a support level, 114. And we looked at like 118 as being kind of the last support level, and so, or last resistance level. So at 117, you're not really down on the 10-year. So it's the 30-year that's been falling a bit, and the 5-year is down a little bit. So bonds recovered, meaning that the yields came down, but now bonds are getting cheap again because there's nobody there to buy them. There's no steady, ready buyer that is not price sensitive. See, when the Federal Reserve Bank was buying treasuries, and I just want to show you, Fred, balance sheet, assets, total assets, WALCL. So the way I found it is I typed in Fred, assets. There's probably different ways to do it. This is the total assets on their balance sheet. And so when the Federal Reserve, this is why I said $9 trillion is a lot of money on their balance sheet. And you see how it peaked at 9.899, and that's 9.9 and change. It's still above 8.9 since mid-February. So since mid-February, we've had $8.9 trillion of assets. So what happens is every day, every month, every year, every quarter, some of those bonds mature. And it's great because then the government gets a payment for the bond. And what they've been doing lately is when those bonds mature and they get the payment, they go out and they just buy. And my guess is that the Federal Reserve Bank isn't negotiating with Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley and Credit Suisse and Deutsche Bank for every penny. My guess is they say, all right, what's the bid? What's the ask? I'll meet you in the middle. And they know it's coming, and so they pump up the price, right? It's not price sensitive. Now, if I buy a bond, I'm buying one bond, probably $1,000, and I'm going to call 15 people to try to get the best price, or I'm going to watch the market. And so that's the difference, right? And so when the Fed starts to pay back or pay down, basically, or buy down its total asset count, you're going to see interest rates go up because bonds will get cheaper because the Fed is not that steady Eddie buyer. We saw in Japan, right? Japan, the government started buying up bonds, but it did it to protect the yield. Here, we're going the opposite direction. So you can see 135.25. It's even moving now as we're speaking. So where are we with the equity futures? Jeffrey, where are we going to open this morning? So, we can look at the futures and say, oh, look, they're up. But I'm always worried about a head fake. And so what we're going to do is look at some of those key sectors I like. And we're going to look at the new view, which is the one that shows where was it last night and where is it this morning. So pre-market change, fourth column. It's easy to set this up, by the way. You go into Yahoo Finance, you got create new view, you click on it, and then you can add columns. So pre-market, you've got a couple of stocks down and a whole bunch of stocks up. So retail is mixed to up. Let's look at regional banks. Nothing's down. Any banks that are trading are up. So banks look good today. How about money managers? Well, Alliance Bernstein is down. That I'm going to be up all night worried about that one. But lots of them are up too. Now, if you look as a group at the money managers, they're either flat to down. And one of the examples, we like the Carlyle Group. And if you look at it for the year, you see how it kind of peaked up at 60 in November. It's down to 34. It's not a very high performing stock right now. Crypto and miners. Pre-market. Well, Coinbase is down, but that doesn't surprise me. Coinbase is probably going to be in play for a while now. I don't know if they got issues with Bitcoin, but that's a big thing there. Look at all the stocks that are up, whether you're mining Bitcoins or you're mining physical assets. You guys are all up pre-market. Production is up. How about cannabis and tobacco? What's interesting is your tobacco stock, BTI, British American Tobacco, is down pre-market. But most of your cannabis stocks are actually up this morning. And so, chips and semis, all up if they're trading. So what I would say is this isn't just a bet on the indices. Although it could be driven by Heartland Express is down. All the others are up. Actually, it's down a lot. There might be news on Heartland Express. That's interesting. It's a $1.1 billion market cap, trading at 1.5 times book. Heartland. I see the trucks all the time. PCs, chips. Hewlett Packard Enterprise is down. 1385. I got some personal news from Hewlett Packard today. In general, the rest of them are up, so it's a good question. I probably should add Cisco, even though it's not chips. And I should add Oracle, and I should add IBM. Who else makes hardware? Sun is gone. Who else makes hardware? Dell. No, Dell's in there. Alright, so take a look. Settings. Rename portfolio. We're going to name this just computers and chips. NetApp. NetApp is in the game. Are they still a separately traded company? Yeah, they are. NTAP. I used to like NetApp. I used to know the CEO. He was a good guy. His whole team was a good team. I was at McKinsey. We got to know each other. So when we look, though, all the computer companies are mixed. So that's interesting. That's economically very sensitive. So going back to it, I had a couple economically sensitive stocks, right? Citigroup, Freeport-McMoRan, Cleveland Cliffs. They're up. Boise Cascade has some issues. If we look at the indices, Well, they don't trade, they don't show pre-market. So here, let's start again. Regional banks, pre-market. They're up. If they're trading, they're up, pre-market. Don't short the banks today. Big mistake. Money managers, pre-market. Alliance Bernstein Carlyle Group is having significant weakness this morning. It's 2 times book, but it's, again, this is a good company, right? There aren't many of them out there, right, that make money year in, year out. And then there's other ones like Goldman Sachs. Right? Goldman Sachs is up 0.5 point pre-market. Okay, let's look at specialty retail and a couple of key furniture ones. And you see here, more retailers are down, but a lot of them are up. And it's so interesting because when we looked a minute ago, Hydrofarm was down, now Hydrofarm's up. Q-rate was flat, now Q-rate is up. So there might be a lot of just trading right now in the morning. This might be a stock trading pre-market morning. That's okay, right? That's just weird, though. It's weird to trade when the markets are closed. I'll never get used to that. You see Coinbase is down. Pretty much everything else. All the miners, physical miners, Bitcoin miners, they're up. Cannabis and tobacco we looked up before. Where are we at? All right. You still have 4 down. The rest are up. Chips and semiconductors. Up. If they're trading, they're up or they're flat. Trucking and transport. Heartland Express is still down. The rest are still up. No movement there. And computer and chips, a little more negative now. And so these are economic bellwethers, right? So I guess here's where I'll come to. The market's up today, pre-market. I don't know if it should be or not. It's not really for me to know. What I can tell you, though, is that the VIX is down, right? And so one of the questions that I have, so let's take a look at our model run. So the variance of the S&P 500 ETF, the index ETF, is 1.55, or rounds up to 1.6 times 10 to the negative 4. There has been a relentless climb of the variance of the S&P 500 over the past year. Oh, excuse me. Oh my goodness. The market is surprisingly negative. S&P 500 is down. It's now 6.8% versus last year. This is excluding dividends. The Russell's down 22.6%. The QQQ is down 15%. It's down a lot, okay? We do a lot of checking on our data. Getting kind of crazy. Look at that. Price increases. Siga Technologies up 87%. Who's down? Fast Radius, Agrify, Lottery, Pineapple, Eros Media, Grow Generation, Joint, Cipher, Loan Depot, Coinbase down almost. It's a little over 70%. So who's got the big volume? Citizens is at 5,000%. Shore Bank Shares, FS Bank Corp. So the banks traded. So this is important. The banks traded on Friday. FVC Bank Corp. Something's going on with the banks, right? So when you see that kind of volume, this is just our solvers. Here, and all right. If we look at the three best, well, that's the other interesting thing. This is our up run, money-making stocks. The expected return of all the money-making stocks is 4.25%. So you're putting your money in the stock market at 4.25%. The precision of our model is negative 8.1 times 10 to the negative 20. So we're a very efficient model today. Very low power, which means risk almost equals return. It's closest that we've seen it in a long time. Very risky markets. And you see the best three stocks to hold are ETFs. And only two ETFs are better than all the stocks. It's not a stock picker's market today. Okay? The worst, Forge, we saw that thing going crazy. LogicMark, Mexico Energy, Freight Tech. These are the worst stocks to hold. Urban One, ATI Physical Therapy, because they just have a ton of risk, Peabody Energy, and no real beta to drive the stock higher. We talked about volume. COS is not trading versus last year. That was a meme stock. But who is trading are the banks. Banks have a lot of momentum behind them, a lot of volume, a lot of interest, right? And then highs and lows, these are your lows. They're pretty low. If you held them, you're down over 50% for the 50 stocks. And highs, RCM Technologies is up 137%. PBF Energy is up. Alpha Metallurgical Resources is up. USA Trucks is up. I mean, lots of stocks are up too. Now here's our solvers. So, and then we get to the solution, and I'll get to that in the next video. So, I want to thank you guys for listening. The model actually picked a very unique set of stocks to invest in today, and I'm very excited about it. I'm going to be probably making investments in those stocks that the model picked. The model was pretty awesome in the way it changed its game today. So, market's up, VIX is down, yields are going to be up higher, long-term yields are going to be higher. We know the banks are trading. There's a lot going on here. So, good luck in the markets. If you like the video, please hit the subscribe button. We really appreciate you subscribing. It's free. It tells YouTube that you like the video, helps spread the word. We don't pay for advertising, and we're not paid to make these videos, so it's all organic viewers. And good luck in the market. So, by the way, if you like to talk, you like to chit-chat back and forth, you can always chat in our video, and you can also leave a comment below. I will respond. Now, if you want to tell me that Dr. Such and Such has a Discord that everyone should pay for, I can't stop you from posting that. But I'd much rather you post a question, maybe something that you saw in the video, and I'll answer. Maybe I'll do some research for tomorrow's video. Thanks so much. God bless you. Good luck in the markets. Bye-bye.